I've put away over 300 people for financial fraud, bank employees skimming pension funds, business partners running fake invoices. One sitting city councilman who thought his position made him untouchable. In 28 years working fraud investigations for First National Bank of Oregon, I thought I'd seen every version of betrayal a person could pull off. I never thought the hardest case of my career would involve my own son. My name is Craig Lawson. I'm 58 years old. Widowed 4 years ago. I live alone in Portland, Oregon, in the same house my wife Patricia and I bought 30 years back when we were young and broke and certain the future would treat us well. I retired from the bank 2 years ago. Now I do small business bookkeeping to stay sharp. I'm not exactly the guy people look at and think dangerous, and that's always been my biggest advantage. The call came on a Friday at 3:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I wrote it down the moment I recognized what I was hearing, old habit. Neil Patterson was on the line. We'd worked together in the fraud department for 15 years before I retired. Neil doesn't call to catch up. When his name shows on my screen, something is wrong. Craig, I need you to sit down. I was already standing up, moving away from my desk toward the window. I'm standing. Talk to me. It's your investment accounts. Our system flagged unusual activity this morning. I ran the report myself before calling you. He paused. 47 transfers over the past 23 days. Each one under $9,000, staying below the currency transaction report threshold. Somebody who understood banking regulations. Total, I asked. 14,267.89. I put my hand on the window frame. Outside, Portland was doing its usual November thing. Gray sky, light rain. People moving fast with their heads down. Ordinary Friday afternoon, nothing about it matched what I was hearing. The receiving accounts, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Neil went quiet for a second. That silence was its own answer. They're all in Sean's name, Craig. I'm sorry, Sean Lawson. My son, 31 years old. The kid I coached in Little League. The one I drove to college orientation with a truck full of furniture and a stomach full of pride. I stood at that window for maybe 10 seconds. Then the part of my brain that spent 28 years doing this job took over. Send me everything. Every transaction record. Every IP address. Every document. Craig, you know I can't. Neil, another pause. I'll encrypt it and send it to your personal email. But Craig, there's more. Your commercial property on Everett Street. Someone filed sale documents 3 days ago. Listing agent is out of Rose City Realty. The signature on those documents is forged. Yes. I thanked him, hung up, and sat down at my dining room table with my laptop. The same table where Patricia used to grade papers after dinner. I opened my investment account and looked at the numbers. My account had been at $18,700 6 weeks ago. It now showed $43,732.11. I didn't call Sean? Not yet. That's the first rule. You never confront the suspect before the evidence is complete. You let them think they got away with it. Comfortable people make mistakes. Scared people run. Neil's encrypted files arrived within the hour. I opened a spreadsheet and started logging every transaction the way I'd done on hundreds of cases. Date, time, amount, receiving account, IP address. The transfers came from multiple locations, a coffee shop on Hawthorne, a hotel near the airport, and several from an office building in South Waterfront. I looked up the address, a company called Maddox Capital Group, 5th floor. I flagged the name and moved on. The pattern in the amounts was deliberate. Not all $80,500. Not all $8,000. They varied. $7,400 here, $8,100 there, $6,900 one Tuesday morning. Organic looking, designed by someone who knew how monitoring systems thought. Sean had watched me work at this table since he was a teenager. He'd asked questions. I thought he was curious about my career. He was learning how to get around my defenses. I walked down the hall to my home office and pulled out the property folder for 1523 Northwest Everett, the commercial building Patricia and I bought 20 years ago. 3 tenants, including a nonprofit that served immigrant families on the ground floor. Good people, stable. I'd never sold it because it felt like the kind of thing you hold on to. Inside the folder was a document I'd never seen before, a listing agreement dated 5 days ago. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be mine. It wasn't, it was a good forgery. The M in my first name had the right loop. But whoever traced it got one detail wrong. They wrote the date in American format. Month first, then day. I've written dates day first my entire adult life. Small thing. The kind of thing only someone who knew me well would catch. I photographed the document and put everything back exactly as I found it. Then I went back to the dining room table and started building the case. By 11 p.m. that Friday, I had a complete case file. Transaction log, IP address map, forged document photographs, timeline correlation. I'd also found something in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet that stopped me cold, a sticky note in Sean's handwriting, a list, my wife Patricia's birthday, our old address on Burnside, the name of my first car, security questions, a shopping list for robbing his own father. I photographed it, put it back, closed the drawer. I went to bed at midnight, not because I was calm, because panicking wasn't going to get my money back. Saturday morning, I sat across from an attorney named Laura Sinclair in her office near Pioneer Courthouse Square. She specialized in financial exploitation cases. I laid out everything, transaction logs, the forged listing agreement, the sticky note photos, the IP addresses tracing back to Maddox Capital Group. She read through it without interrupting. When she finished, she set the papers down and looked at me. "Most clients bring me fragments," she said. "You brought me a finished case." Laura brought in a private investigator named Sharon Albright that afternoon. Sharon spent the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday running background on Sean's recent financial history and the name Maddox. What she came back with changed everything. Sean had invested $65,000 with a man named Eric Maddox, his college roommate from University of Oregon. Maddox was running a fake cryptocurrency fund called Maddox Capital Group. No actual trading, no mining operation. Just new investor money cycling through to pay earlier investors, with most of it disappearing into Maddox's personal accounts. Sharon found records of 14 victims and $1.4 million in total losses. She also found that the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had been watching Maddox for 8 months, but hadn't moved yet because they needed harder evidence on his extortion activity. By June, Sean had figured out the fund was worthless. He demanded his $65,000 back. That's when Maddox made his move. He told Sean that recruiting those 3 investors made Sean legally liable for wire fraud. Federal crime, 5 to 10 years. Pay me $80,000 or I call the FBI myself. 6 days after that threat, the first transfer appeared in my account. I sat with that information for a long time Saturday night. Sean hadn't stolen from me because he was greedy or entitled. He'd stolen because someone had him trapped and he didn't see another way out. That didn't make it okay. But it told me who the real predator in this situation was. As for the money, the math worked out like this. Maddox wanted $80,000. The wedding was running somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000. Sean had debt from the credit card advances he'd taken out trying to fund that $65,000 investment in the first place. Another $13,000 or so at 23% interest. Added up, $80,000 plus $50,000 plus $13,000 and $267 in a debt. That's a $143,277 and every dollar accounted for. My son had mapped out exactly what he needed and taken exactly that amount. Precise, methodical. He'd learned that from me too. Friday night, Sean had texted, "Dad, amazing news. Call me when you can." I texted back Saturday morning, "Been swamped." "Call me tonight?" He called at 9:47 p.m. I had the recording app running before I picked up. "Dad, I have incredible news." That bright, forced energy in his voice, I recognized it from when he was 15 and hiding something. Diane and I are getting married. This Sunday, 2 days from now, there was a last-minute cancellation at the Crystal Ballroom downtown. We grabbed it. I played my part, surprised, happy. A little confused about the short notice, I asked about money. "How are you pulling this off, son?" And he told me about a big promotion, a 20% raise that had just come through. Sharon's report showed 0 employment income deposits to his account in 8 months. No job, no raise. Just my money being described back to me as his success. "I'm so proud of you," I told him. The words tasted like ash, but I said them. At the 7-minute mark, I heard Diane Harmon's voice in the background, low, quick. "Make sure he doesn't ask about the accounts." And Sean's response, clearly audible. "He won't. He never checks them. Dad's not exactly detail-oriented these days." I stopped the recording after we hung up, saved it to 3 separate cloud accounts and a thumb drive I put in my jacket pocket, belt and suspenders. That was always the rule in our department. Always back up your backup. Sunday afternoon, Crystal Ballroom. I counted the rose arrangements when I walked in, old habit, and estimated $8,000 in flowers alone. The champagne at the door was Perrier, $300 a case, and I could see at least 12 bottles at the bar. The string quartet in the corner ran $3,000 minimum. I'd already looked up the venue rate, $15,000 for a weekend booking. My money everywhere I looked. The wire device was clipped under my shirt collar, same position I'd worn 12 of times on the job. Voice activated. 8 hours of battery, admissible in court. I watched my son get married with a smile on my face. During the reception, Diane Harmon found me near the bar and steered me toward a corner table away from the noise. She sat down and dropped the bride, act like she was taking off a coat. Craig, we need to talk about your financial situation. Her voice was flat, businesslike. Sean's worried. You're living alone, you're getting older, and those investment accounts are complicated. The smart move is to simplify. Give Sean power of attorney, let him manage things going forward. Less stress for you. That's very thoughtful, I said. It's already moving, she continued, leaning in slightly. The Everett Street building, that sale closes in 30 days. You should start thinking about your living situation, maybe something smaller, a senior community. Sean and I have been looking into options near Lake Oswego. She picked up her clutch and stood. Enjoy the rest of the evening, Craig. I watched her walk back toward the dance floor. Then I reached up and confirmed the wire device was still running. Crystal clear, every word. I texted Laura from the parking garage, have everything we need. Monday morning, I drove home from the Crystal Ballroom that Sunday night thinking I had everything figured out. The recordings were backed up. Laura had the filing ready. Monday morning, we'd walk into court and start the process. Clean, methodical. The way I'd closed hundreds of cases before this one. Then my phone rang at 2 a.m. Sean, I answered on the second ring, you okay, Dad? His voice was different. Not the polished, rehearsed Sean from the phone call Friday night. This was something raw. Eric sent someone to my apartment tonight. 2 guys. They didn't knock, they just stood outside my door for over an hour. Then they left. Eric texted me right after, said the deadline is this week. Said if the money isn't there by Friday next time they come inside. I sat up and put my feet on the floor. Are you physically safe right now? Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the apartment, but Dad, his voice cracked. I know you know about the accounts. I've known for days that you'd figure it out eventually. I just didn't know how to stop it. I got in so deep so fast and I couldn't see any way out that didn't destroy everything. I didn't say anything for a moment. There was a lot I could have said. I had every right to say it. But at 2 a.m. with my son's voice sounding like that, the part of me that spent 28 years building cases stepped back and let the other part take over. How much does Eric know about your situation? I asked. Everything. He knows about you. He knows about the accounts. He's been directing the whole thing, telling me how much to take, and when that changed the picture significantly. This wasn't just extortion. Maddox had been orchestrating the theft directly, making him liable not just for the Ponzi scheme and the original extortion demand, but for the full $143 in $260.77 taken from my accounts. The FBI's case just got a lot stronger. Sean, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? A long silence. After what I did to you, you're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to let me handle this the right way. Don't contact Eric again. Don't respond to any messages. Not until I tell you to, okay? He said quietly, okay, Dad. I hung up and called Barbara Weston. Barbara Weston was a special agent with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, mid-40s, direct, the kind of person who got to the point inside the first 30 seconds of any conversation. I'd gotten her contact from Laura, who had worked with her on 2 previous elder financial abuse cases. I'd reached out Sunday evening after leaving the ballroom. She'd agreed to a Monday morning meeting. The 2 a.m. call from Sean just made that meeting more urgent. I was sitting across from her in a conference room at the FBI's Portland field office at 10 a.m. Monday, with Sean's extortion text messages printed out and the full transaction log on the table between us. She read through the text twice. Her grip on the papers tightened on the second pass. Where did you get these? My son gave them to me this morning. He's victim number 7 on your list. Maddox trapped him, extorted him, and directed him to steal from me to cover the payment. Sean is ready to cooperate fully. Weston looked up. What are you proposing? Sean wears a wire. He contacts Maddox, tells him he has a partial payment and needs to discuss the rest in person. Gets him talking, the extortion demand, the Ponzi scheme, the threat last night, all of it on tape. You get your arrest with airtight evidence. Then Sean faces my state charges separately. And you're comfortable with your son being the one to walk in there? No, I said. But Sean is the only person Maddox trusts right now. And Maddox needs to be stopped before he does this to the next family. Weston made a call. Came back 10 minutes later. We're in, we move Wednesday. That gives us time to prepare Sean and set the location. Maddox needs to feel in control. We let him pick the meeting spot. Maddox picked his own office. 5th floor, South Waterfront. Of course he did. He thought he was untouchable there Wednesday, 3:47 p.m. I parked 2 blocks from Maddox Capital Group and sat with my phone on speaker, connected to Weston's surveillance line. The FBI van was around the corner. Sean had gone in 4 minutes ago. I heard Sean's footsteps in the elevator, the ding of the doors opening on the 5th floor. Then Maddox's voice, warm, easy, the practiced friendliness of a man who'd made a career out of sounding trustworthy. Sean, you got the money. Most of it. $15,000. I need more time for the rest. A pause. When Maddox spoke again, the warmth was gone. We had a deal. $80,000. End of this week. You think showing up with 15 changes anything? Eric, I'm trying. You recruited Mark and Jennifer and David into my fund. You sent emails. You made phone calls. That's wire fraud, Sean. Federal, 5 to 10 years. You want to explain that to your father? A short laugh. Actually, maybe he already knows. You think he'd cover for you? I just need more time. You don't have more time. And here's what you need to understand. Maddox's voice dropped, but the microphone was clear. There is no fund. There never was. No mining, no algorithm, no blockchain. I move money around until it disappears. That's the business. And everyone I do this to is too embarrassed to go to the police because they handed me their savings and smiled while they did it. You're no different. Except you're also a thief now, which makes you easier to manage. The silence that followed lasted about 4 seconds. Then the doors hit the wall. Weston's voice, sharp and flat. FBI, hands where I can see them, do not move. Shouting, a chair scraping hard across the floor, 2 more agents calling out positions. Then Maddox and whatever control he'd built his whole life around dissolved in about 90 seconds into a string of denials that nobody in that room was going to believe. I sat in my car and listened to it all. When it was over, I set the phone down on the passenger seat and stared through the windshield at the ordinary Wednesday afternoon outside. People walking to lunch. A delivery truck double parked. A woman with a stroller waiting for the light. Eric Maddox had built a career on the assumption that the people he hurt would be too ashamed or too confused or too old to fight back. He'd picked the wrong family this time, and he'd find that out in court. I started the car and drove home. Eric Maddox took a deal 3 weeks later. 9 years in federal prison, wire fraud, mail fraud, extortion, racketeering. 14 families, $1.4 million. The prosecutor told me afterward that Sean's wire recording was the cleanest piece of evidence she'd worked with in 6 years. Maddox had no room to maneuver. He'd confessed to everything on tape in his own office because he'd spent so long getting away with it that he'd stopped being careful. That's the thing about people like him. They mistake a long winning streak for invincibility. Sean's sentencing hearing was the same afternoon. He stood before Judge Evelyn Chandra in a gray suit that Laura had brought him, looking thinner than I'd seen him in years. He'd entered a guilty plea: fraud, forgery, theft. The prosecutor recommended 2 years incarceration. Laura had submitted my written statement requesting leniency based on Sean's full cooperation with the FBI and his role in bringing down a predator who'd victimized 14 people. The judge read my statement twice. Then she looked at Sean over her glasses. Mr. Lawson, I'm sentencing you to 10 months house arrest at your father's residence, followed by 5 years supervised probation. Full restitution of $143 and $267 plus interest. Mandatory therapy twice weekly. 500 hours community service. Sean's shoulders dropped about 2 inches. Relief, shame, exhaustion, all of it at once. Your father advocated for you today, Judge Chandra said. That means something. Don't waste it. Diane Harmon didn't make it to the sentencing hearing. She was gone before it was even scheduled. 3 days after the FBI arrested Maddox, she cleaned out the apartment she and Sean had shared, loaded what she could carry into her car, and left. She emptied their joint bank account on the way out, $6,200, everything in it. Left a note on the kitchen counter that said she couldn't be with someone whose family created this much chaos. The annulment filing came 10 days later. She didn't contest anything, didn't show up for any proceedings, just disappeared. The DA's office pursued conspiracy charges against her for several months based on the wire recording from the ballroom, her own words describing the property sale and the plan to move Craig's accounts under Sean's control. Her attorney eventually negotiated a plea: 18 months probation, restitution contribution, no jail time in exchange for full cooperation, identifying 2 other individuals involved in directing the financial transfers. Her parents, Peter and Gloria Harmon, cut contact with her shortly after the plea was entered. Peter Harmon sent me a handwritten letter, 2 paragraphs. He said he was sorry for what his daughter had done and that he hoped Sean and I could find a way through it. I kept the letter. It was a decent thing to do and it cost him something to write it. Gloria Harmon came to my house the morning of the FBI operation, before I left for the surveillance position. I almost didn't answer the door. But she looked like she hadn't slept in 3 days, and there was nothing calculating about it. She sat at my dining table and told me she'd been Sean's therapist for the past 3 months. He'd come to her in early August, severe anxiety, panic attacks, trouble leaving his apartment. He hadn't known she was Diane's mother at first. By the time he figured it out, he was already deep into treatment and too fragile to start over with someone new. She'd brought a folder. Session notes with Sean's signed release, allowing her to share them with me. I read through them slowly. August entries describing a man who couldn't sleep, who rehearsed apologies to me in his head every night, who wrote in one session, My dad is the best man I know. When he finds out what I did, I won't be able to face him. September entries showing someone who'd considered not being around anymore. October entries steadier, but still barely holding on. I set the folder down after a while and didn't say anything for a minute. He never told me the full picture, Gloria said. Just that he owed someone money. I didn't know about your accounts until Neil Patterson's name came up in the news cycle after the FBI filing. You came here to tell me to go easy on him, I said. I came here to make sure you had the full picture before you made any decisions. What you do with it is your business. She left the folder and let herself out. I sat at that table for a long time after she left. The same table where I'd built the case file. Same room where I'd mapped out 47 transactions and tracked IP addresses and photographed a sticky note that Sean had written as a blueprint for stealing from me. Same house where he'd grown up. I picked up my phone and called Barbara Weston to confirm the afternoon operation was still on. It was. We moved forward. And that evening, Maddox was in custody. That was 18 months ago. Sean served his house arrest here. We set ground rules the first day. He paid for his own groceries, handled his own laundry, kept his therapy appointments without reminders. I didn't treat it as punishment, and I didn't treat it as forgiveness. I treated it as a starting point. He moved into his own apartment after the 10 months were up. Got a job at a mid-size accounting firm in Northwest Portland. Pays $1,200 toward restitution every month. First of the month. No reminders needed. He's got about $120 left to go. It'll take years. He knows that. We have breakfast most Sundays at a diner on Southeast Grand. His idea from the start, neutral ground, separate checks. I respected that. A few weeks ago over coffee, he asked me straight, "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me?" I thought about it for a real minute before answering. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because he deserved an honest one instead of a quick one. Some days, I said, some days I look at you and I don't see any of it, just my son showing up, doing the work. Those days, yeah, I've forgiven you. And other days I think about that sticky note in my filing cabinet, the list you made. He nodded, looked at his coffee, but every day I said I choose to keep showing up to this table. That's the part that matters, not the feeling, the choice. He picked up his check. I picked up mine. We walked out to the parking lot and went our separate ways, same as every Sunday. 2008 years, catching fraudsters taught me a lot of things. The one that stays with me most is this. The people who do the most damage aren't always the greedy ones. Sometimes they're just the desperate ones, the ones somebody smarter backed into a corner and handed a bad option. The greedy ones are Eric Maddox. The ones worth fighting for are the ones who got used and made the wrong call and have to live with it. Sean's living with it every day. So am I. And we're still at the table. That's enough for now. If this story resonated with you, I'd like to know. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. And if you've been through something like this with your own family, tell me what you did. I'd genuinely like to hear it.